Bobby Zirkin, former state senator from Baltimore County, here on behalf of the Maryland State Bar Association as we continue to connect with the candidates for office. Today, we are interviewing candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. As we approach the July primary election, the State Bar remains committed to our members and to the public at large to connect in a nonpartisan forum about the issues that matter to the public and to the legal profession. MSBA has appreciated the positive relationship we've always had with the executive branch over the years, and we hope to continue working together on important issues as we have in the past. Please visit our website to see any of the candidate interviews at msba.org/connect with the candidates for any of the gubernatorial, lieutenant governor, or attorney general interviews. And this morning, I am really proud to be here with my former colleague, Aruna Miller, who is running for lieutenant governor on the Moore-Miller ticket. So welcome. It's very 2022 to do this on Zoom, but welcome.
Thank you so much, Senator Zirkin. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning, and I really look forward to hearing about the issues that are important to the Maryland State Bar Association, and I thank all of them for the great work that they do throughout the state.
All right, well, great. Well, it's good to see you. Let me start with just kind of a basic question for those who may not know you. You haven't had an opportunity to meet on the campaign trail or in your prior life as a member of the House of Delegates. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, what you do for a living, who is Aruna Miller?
Sure. Well, Aruna Miller is a lot of different years of being in this country, right? I came to the United States when I was 7 years old in 1972. And I have to tell you, Senator, I'll never forget the first day when I walked off the airplane in my dad's arms. I thought everybody in the airport were waiting for my dad and me and our arrival to the United States. And then I thought, wow, what a cool place. Look, they're throwing confetti for us. Turned out the confetti was snow. I'd never seen snow before. But I'll tell you what, that day I was so pumped to be in this country, and I've never stopped being pumped to be here because of the great opportunities the United States has provided, not only to myself, but to immigrants throughout every corner of the world that came here and chose to be Americans. So that's kind of my beginning as an immigrant. I am a civil engineer by profession. And as soon as I graduated from college, I knew what I wanted to do was to pay it forward. I wanted to dedicate my life to public service because, again, it was the policies that allowed my family and I to come to this country. It was the public educators that taught me English and taught me so much more that I could be anything that I wanted to be, and I believed them. And it was the taxpayers that allowed me to cross the finish line by providing Pell Grants when I couldn't do it myself. So upon graduation, I knew that's what I wanted to do, was being a public servant. So I've spent 25 years as a transportation engineer in Montgomery County DOT. And then I had the great honor and pleasure of serving as a Maryland State delegate for 8 years and serving beside you as well. So that's who Aruna Miller is. And I'm also a mother of 3 daughters.
Okay, well, that's the most important one. I'm the father of 2. So we can connect on that. Let me ask you this. So how had, so you were in the House of Delegates, and then you ran for Congress after that, and then kind of, how does it that all of a sudden you are back on a major ticket to become the lieutenant governor should the voters elect you? How did that all come to be?
Great question. So I got to tell you, in Aruna Miller's crystal ball, there was no indication that I was going to be running as a lieutenant governor on anyone's ticket. But then I kept hearing about this person named Wes Moore. My friends and colleagues in the General Assembly kept calling me, and they were like, hey, have you heard about Wes Moore? Have you heard him speak? Have you met him? And I said, no, I've never met him before. So anyway, fast forward October of 2021, I get the honor of meeting Wes Moore and his wife. We met in Baltimore, my husband and I. And, needless to say, I looked at his resume, incredible, remarkable resume. He has a very, compelling life story. He's an engaging speaker. More importantly, he's an engaging listener. And after 45 minutes of meeting with Wes, walked away. We were like,
Sorry.
oh my gosh, Wes Moore is going to be the next governor of Maryland. I've never had that gut reaction toward any candidate before, but I did with Wes. And all I can say, all the things that I just described, I think Maryland is facing a generational challenges that's going to require a future facing leader. And I think Wes Moore is that individual.
Okay, so you're on the ticket. Election is just around the corner. Let's get to some issues. And obviously, this is the state bar and interested in legal issues, but also at large. Let's just start with this. Give us like your top 2, top 3, top 4 priorities with some specificity if you can. So like, should the Moore Miller ticket be successful? What is it that you do hitting the ground on day one?
Sure, great question. Look, there's no doubt that one of the most important things that we need to address is education, right? We have the blueprint ahead of us, and I assure you that the Moore Miller administration will fully fund the blueprint and make sure that we continue to invest in our public education. We need to do that, Senator, because no matter where we go, education is going to touch our future. It's going to touch every individual in this state. It's going to create individuals that are ready for the 21st century economy. So education is a priority. Number 2, our climate. Right. I mean, we have to do this with a sense of urgency of now. This is an existential threat. And we need to make sure that we have an administration that's going to focus on climate and how we're going to address this, this challenge ahead of us. And it can be, the solutions are out there. And then finally, I would say the economy, right? The economy plays into every aspect of what we do, from public safety to being able to create jobs. So we increase our tax base, to being able to address climate, right? How are we going to do transportation that will be able to complement the issues that we're facing as far as climate is concerned? So I would say those would be our top 3 priorities: education, climate, and making sure that we address economy at a broad level. And again, going back to public safety, if you don't have jobs out there, you're going to have individuals that are going to resort to crime and thus increasing crime. So I think it all ties in together.
Okay, so let me try to drill down. Not my area of expertise in the General Assembly, since I was on Judiciary, not on the Environment Committee, but question. So last General Assembly session, under the leadership of Kumar, Barve, Paul Pinsky, and others, they did pass a climate action bill. Did they do it correctly? Did they go far enough? Are there ways to build on that in a kind of like looking forward into the next 4 years?
Look, I think the General Assembly, as you know, Senator, there's always going to be disagreements, even if you're Democrats, even if it's on a subject matter as, so important as climate. It's always going to be difference of opinion, right? That's just part of it. But I think moving forward, again, we need to address this in the most urgent manner possible. And look, there's no, denying that the effects of climate change are everywhere in Maryland. We've lost $10 billion over the past decade as a result of it. We had to close schools from extreme heat and weather. And, we're battling 100-year storms that are happening every 5 years instead of 100 years. So we got to address this crisis in the way it's showing itself, which is every way in every sector. And we need to be able to come to the legislators who have a difference of opinion and work towards moving that needle toward where it needs to be. as you know, in every session, when you introduce a bill, it's not exactly the way you want it because it's going to go through a committee. It's going to have a lot of voices and fingerprints all over it. And you may not get exactly what you want, but in the end, you come back the next year and work towards moving that needle further to where you want it to be. So let's
Are
just say,
are there specific things that that you guys would like to address? Like I know, I believe your running mate had talked about fleets of state vehicles, and again, not my area of expertise, but are there specific things that you kind of want to address, moving forward on the climate issue?
yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Good point that you raise about the electric vehicles and making sure that an entire state fleet is electric. We also want to be able to appoint a chief sustainability mitigation and resilience officer to be able to report directly to the governor and focus on coordinating all efforts across sectors to enforce our deep commitment to this issue. And, there's a whole other level of issues, again, going back to transportation, making sure that we're able to address public transit that is reliable and dependable and getting individuals out of single occupancy vehicles. I think we need to be able to fully move forward on that issue and give individuals alternative modes of transportation as well, whether it's by walking, biking, again, using public transit. So yeah, there are a whole host of things that we can specifically do to address climate.
So I know transportation is your area of expertise, and as a civil engineer. So let me jump to transportation.
Sure.
Other candidates have talked about, one yesterday talked about building another bridge across the bay. There were certainly people have brought up the red line, the purple line, all the colors of the rainbow. So I guess what are the top transportation priorities for you? And I'll couch that by saying I remember the debate vaguely about the red line, and there was always a debate about it was incredibly expensive. I mean, that's my county, but it was always, is the juice worth the squeeze on the red line? Not, obviously it's great to have, but was the price worth what the benefit would be? So your thoughts kind of generally on transportation, but also kind of what your priorities would be.
Sure, great question. So generally about transportation, I really believe that the state needs to move towards more equitable transportation. Look, transportation affects our lives in creating jobs, in making sure businesses want to move to our state to build their businesses, because when we question business leaders, one of the top things that they said was, if you don't have a good infrastructure out there for our employees, we don't want to move to the state. So it affects our economy, it affects our environment, it affects equity of all individuals. Again, transportation is not just about moving vehicles, it's about moving people and being equitable to all. The good thing about living in the state of Maryland, we do have a robust economy. And with the robust economy, what happens is you get a lot of traffic congestion. So how do we address this? Well, I can tell you here in Montgomery County, the governor has proposed a big project to do improvements, public-private partnership along I-270. And I can tell you that our administration is not favorable to that particular plan for many reasons. Number one, the P3 procurement process, we believe, is deeply flawed. Take a look at how the Purple Line is being ran right now. It's over budgeted, it's delayed, and it was a public-private partnership. So we need to take a look at the procurement process. So we have improvements there. As you indicated, Senator, you got the red line, the purple line, the blue line. We need to be able to really put our focus into public transit. That really is going to be a big part of creating solutions for our state. I know of a business owner here in Montgomery County who literally moved his business 7 miles down the road, a business of over 200 employees. And you know why he did it when I asked him? He said because his employees were demanding that they have access to public transportation in order to get to work. I think we're living, we need to understand that we're living in the 21st century where people don't do things the same way that we did in the 20th century of having cars. We still have them, but I think people want choices and options. And I think that's the way we need to address overall in Maryland.
So from the Baltimore-centric point of view, does the red line get put back onto the agenda? And I guess one of the questions is there still federal funding for that if it does get onto the get back onto the queue?
100%. The red line gets back in the queue. And as I understand, our federal delegation is wildly smart and understood the importance of having the red line in Baltimore. Again, from an economic perspective, how that's going to create so much economy surrounding the area. So they added it back into the infrastructure bill, I believe, that if the next administration in Maryland decides to prioritize the red line, that we will be right back in the queue of where it was left off before the Hogan administration took over.
Okay.
So I think that's a very important part.
All right. All right. So let's move. I'm getting text messages on how much time we have, but we can go over a couple of minutes. Let me switch to something. I've seen some advertisements, and I know your running mate has spoken a lot about crime and public safety. And I guess one of the questions, I live in Baltimore. I live in Baltimore County, but not very far from Baltimore City. And obviously there is increasing crime, not just here, but across the state and really across the country. It's an epidemic in our country: gun violence, mass shootings, and so on. But also just down to the base level of, in the city that I care a great deal about, a stubborn problem for years now, really, many years of 325, 350 murders, 1,000 or so non-fatal shootings. So if they had, shot straighter, you'd have more than 350 murders. And so I guess my question is from a short-term perspective, because often when you ask these questions, people talk about forever, ever since I was elected, jobs and economy, all those things incredibly important for long-term solutions. But there are thousands of people who have buried their families in the city. And, I guess the question that I ask is, well, what do we do about that right now? Like, what is the answer, if there is one, to stopping that mass violence now and do the long-term stuff? So I guess what's the more Miller approach in the short term as well as the long term for public safety?
Thank you for that question. Look, I'm going to share a shocking statistic with you. Recently, the Biden administration stated that in the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active duty military combined. This is heart-wrenching. This is unacceptable, and this needs to stop. And here in Maryland, I believe we've had over 573 homicides in 2020 alone, in which guns contributed to over 80% of these homicides. So the greatest responsibility of the next chief executive of our state is ensuring public safety. And we need to address this holistically. That means bringing communities, law enforcement, faith leaders, nonprofit organizations, and other leaders together to tackle these pressing challenges. Our specific plan calls for investment in community violence intervention programs, which are some of the most effective programs to combat violent crime because they lean on people with lived experience to actually de-escalate crime. Look, Senator, one of the things that Wes Moore and I always say is those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So we need to bring these individuals to the table to come up with the solutions as we move forward. We also need to have a laser focus on rebuilding community police relations. That's important. Communities need to feel that they can trust their law enforcement, right? We cannot have this where they feel like they're coming into the community and they're going to tear it apart. That's not what police are meant to do. They are meant to be there as a service to help us to bring public safety. So we have to build upon these relationships. And, we have to address recidivism. More than 40% of people who are reincarcerated do so within 3 years. And this is costly. It creates more victims as we move forward. And then finally, we'd like to be able to address probation and parole reform. Again, there are lots and lots of solutions. Most importantly, we need to bring the individuals who are closest to the situation to help us develop these solutions.
So one of the looming crises in public safety, and I know you know this in Montgomery County, but it's soon to be announced apparently in Baltimore County too, at least from the police department. In Montgomery County, I was told by Senator Smith and others that the recruiting class for police officers there was I think they said 9 people showed up, and they have tremendous vacancies there. In Baltimore County, it could be as many as 300 vacancies in the police department for our county. It's about 230, 240 right now. And so, it reminds me of when I first got elected, there was a huge nursing shortage, and there was almost like a Marshall Plan to try to get nurses back into the profession. If you don't have police officers on the street, you are begging for trouble. And so I guess, what is the answer to, it's a multifaceted problem. And so I guess, what is the answer to making sure that on day one we get officers in uniform, well trained, and back out on the street so that we don't have all these vacancies across the state?
No, great question. I'm not sure that we can do it on day one, but on day one, what we need to do is to make sure that we provide the type of services police officers and law enforcement need in order to do their job successfully, right? Look, day in and day out, they're faced with a lot of issues, much like all of us, but even to a different level, because they are supposed to be the gatekeepers of our making sure our communities are safe. So they need to have benefits such as mental health services for them, to be able to recruit and retain them, to make sure they stay in the job. One of the things that was posed to me that I had no idea that this is actually an issue. There are many immigrants in this country, and many of them who are still just hold a green card. They're not citizens yet. And these individuals are allowed to be attorneys and so many other professions, but they are prohibited from being a police officer, which is really quite alarming for me to hear that. They can be public school teachers, they can be firemen, they can be attorneys, but they're not allowed to be police officers. And I think, a community member pointed this out to me again. Those closest to the solution, to the problem, or closest to the solution. That is an area that I'd like to look into. How do we lift that ban so we can have more people who are green card holders that are allowed to serve as law enforcement officers?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that I didn't know that. That's
I didn't know that either.
Okay. Let me stay on this topic for a second. There was obviously a mass shooting at a school in Texas. Not so long ago, there was a school shooting here in Maryland that I was actually minimally involved in when you and I were serving together. At Randallstown High School, when one of my basketball games got shot up. This is a problem that doesn't seem to be going away. So I guess, it's a large question, but let me throw some other things out there. The Supreme Court overturned our permitting process for right to carry. So that's in disarray. There's issues about, what we've been talking about, gun violence and school resource officer programs and all the rest. Where does the Moore-Miller administration on this very large topic come down? What are your priorities in terms of gun violence specifically, and just guns?
Yeah. Look, overall, it is really troubling to see what is happening across the nation and the decisions of the Supreme Court as well. And I think what's also troubling is when you take a look at the mass shootings that are most recently being committed are done by young people, right? Between the ages of 18 to 21. And that wasn't the case in the past. So we need to take a look at what is prompting young people to turn to such, violent behavior. So we go to the schools, right? And we have so many issues going on there. After COVID, everybody has been traumatized by that, from our educators to our support staff, to the students, to the parents, the isolation that it created. But more importantly, looking forward, I think we need to be able to provide more mental health services right in the school system as early on as possible. Look, one of the things that the Miller administration wants to do is to make sure that we provide pre-K to even a larger swath of students across the state of Maryland. The earlier we get students into school, the better it is for them. And more importantly, to be able to provide the mental health services as counselors and things of this nature, to be able to be there for them. And here's another part of it. When we take students into school, we ask for their vaccination records. Very important, right? Because you want to make sure that you're protecting public safety, so every student is vaccinated. But just as importantly, I think we need to be able to have a checkup from the neck up. I think everybody that comes into school should also have this service that's available to them. And our healthcare system should be able to require this and make it mandatory, just like you get vaccination shots. I think we should be able to have mental health checkups every year.
Do you think that there is a necessity now that we are, in essence, a right to carry state, like the Supreme Court essentially threw out our permitting process for carrying guns, which was painstakingly put together,
Yeah.
the Handgun Russell Review Board and the administrative, go through the administrative law judges. All of that seems, at least, to have been tossed out by the Supreme Court in this New York case. And so it leaves us, if that's true, and it leaves us with as a right to carry state. Do you think that there's a necessity to dig back into the law to see who actually can get and kind of go about it in a different way to limit the number of people who are able to carry on the street, not just kind of open it up to whoever can purchase a gun? Or do you think that it is what it is at this point?
No, I think we need to be able to address this, Senator. Look, as you indicated, the legislature worked so hard to pass the, bills to strengthen gun safety and all in our states. And at the time, and as it continues to be, look, Maryland can have the strongest gun laws, but we're in a silo because you look right across, in Virginia and our neighbors and other states, and they're not as strong as we are. And then with this decision that the Supreme Court just recently passed and what happened in New York, this is very troubling. I was actually at an event last night where the individual said, hey, I'd like to host an event. And can I put on the event that we don't want anyone that's going to come in with weapons to our event? Is this legal? Can I do that? So there's a lot of things I think moving forward that we need to be able to address as a result of the decision that was carried out by the Supreme Court. Really troubling times ahead. But at the same time, Senator, I believe the solutions are out there, and I'm optimistic, and I know Westmore is as well, to build a state that is safe for all of us.
All right, well, let's move. I have so many things to ask you about, and not a lot of time. So let me move quickly to what is not a particularly small topic, and the other Supreme Court case that came down a few days after the New York one eliminated Roe v. Wade. And so, I guess my question is your thoughts on that, but more importantly, from Maryland. Maryland's already has enshrined in the law a pro-choice position, but Are there things that Maryland should be doing in addition to where we are with the law? Are we fine where we are? Do you think that this should be enshrined in the Constitution, as some folks have suggested? You know, where are you on, and where's your ticket on all of these issues related to reproductive rights?
Well, thank you for that question. I can tell you, as a woman, I can tell you, Westmore, who surrounds himself with strong women, we are absolutely opposed to what happened. We are angry about it. And guess what? We're going to take that anger and put it into things that resolve issues here. So one, your question was, do we believe that we should enshrine this right in our Constitution? 100%. In fact, that is exactly what we plan to do when we get elected, to work with the legislature to make sure that it is enshrined in our Constitution. Number two, on day one, when we get elected, our administration will release the $3.5 million that the legislature approved for training for healthcare providers to expand access to abortion, which currently the current governor is refusing to release. We think that is vital. Look, 90% of Marylanders believe abortion should be legal. We're going to make sure that we do everything, that every Marylander in our state has access to, affordable, accessible access to reproductive rights here. Any leverage, any opening that we give to this is going to open it ourselves to so many other liberties and freedoms that should not be taken away from any one of us. And so Westmore and I are absolutely going to stand behind women, their access to abortion and reproductive health care.
Okay. Are there other, I guess, well, it's a broader question, and we only have a few minutes left, and I want to give you a chance kind of to do a wrap up and give us the last word. But there is another constitutional amendment on the ballot this year, and that has to do with marijuana. And just to be, I don't recall when this all happened in terms of timing, but I was the sponsor of the decriminalization bill, along with Kiefer Mitchell and others. I guess my question is, there was an interesting article the other day, and that made me pause when and it was on, I think, CNN.com or something, but it was from a health journal showing that there was a fairly significant increase in mental health issues with cannabis use, and they related it to the amount of THC that was in there. So it's just it's a different animal these days than maybe it was when I was a kid. Not that I knew anything about it, but I guess my question is, with all of the issues of health and who gets to sell, it was a painful process over 2 decades to put together the medical cannabis field. Your thoughts on, do you think that legalization should pass, because then that goes in the Constitution too? And then if it does pass, which it looks likely to do, kind of what are the next steps for your administration? Because it falls on you guys as soon as you get there.
Sure. Well, I 100% believe it should be legalized. And I was glad to be part of the same effort as you, Senator, when we decriminalized it. And here is the next step to make sure that we legalize it. Look, far too many individuals' lives have been negatively impacted by by marijuana laws. That have been, disproportionately impacted our communities of color, those that are living, in poverty, and others, and it has been wrong. The war on drugs has been, in my opinion, a fail in so many levels. And I think this is one step towards resolving that. Now, you're right. With every bill that we pass, there's always unintended consequences. And as you pointed out, marijuana, will certainly have its own problems associated with it when we legalize it. But I believe we've had a commission that has been working on this. And it is the commission and the people that are experts in those areas that we're going to lean on to better understand, well, how do we address those unintended consequences of legalizing it should it pass, this year? So I think there are lots of ways to do this. Number one, you look at other states that have already legalized it for many years, and we learn from their mistakes as well as the solutions that they came up with. But more importantly, like I said, it is working with a commission of experts that can help us lead in the direction that we need to be to make sure this is safe and better for our community overall.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm getting the high sign here on the chat. So let me just give you the last the last word on this. I mean, you are our final interview, and the primary election has essentially started because people have their mail-in ballots already. Early voting starts in just a few short days. So I guess in the last couple of minutes, if somebody's tuning into this and is undecided, why is the Moore Miller ticket the one that they should be attracted to?
Thank you for that. And we believe that the Moore Miller administration is going to be the ones that can bring people together. Look, I can tell you right now, Wes Moore's qualifications to be the next executive of the state are unparalleled in modern times because he has public, private, nonprofit experience. I bring executive and legislative experience to the ticket. And as I've been traveling along with Wes Moore for the past 7 months, I can tell you that he's able to inspire the base and energize the base without alienating the others. And during these divisive times, we need a leader that can bring people together. We need a unifier because Marylanders deserve this. They deserve a partner in Annapolis and not hyper partisanship. And I will say that we received endorsements from more federal, state, and local leaders than any other campaign. And these are leaders who work closely with some of the candidates that are currently running for office for decades. And they believe that we are the best ticket to move forward to win the primary, and more importantly, to win in November. And just as importantly, to be able to be the leaders that will be ready to take charge on day one on January 19th.
All right. Former delegate Aruna Miller, candidate for lieutenant governor. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me give you let me just say real fast because I have to. At the end of all these interviews, again, for anybody watching, if you want to see this interview or any other that we've done for the gubernatorial candidates, lieutenant governor candidates, and attorney general candidates to this point, you can go to msba.org/connect with the candidates, and you can see them all. And so, Aruna Miller, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Senator.
All right.